The axe blade wedged itself into the log with a dull thunk that echoed across the Wyoming prairie. And Helena Vaughn knew immediately. She had made a mistake trying to split wood this size alone. It was late September in 1878, and the morning air carried the first real bite of the coming winter, a reminder that her small cabin needed far more firewood than what currently sat stacked against the north wall. She planted her boot on the log and yanked at the axe handle, her calloused hands slipping on the smooth wood as sweat dampened her palms despite the chill. The blade would not budge. "Damn it all," she muttered, giving another futile tug before stepping back to catch her breath. Her dark hair had come loose from its bun, strands sticking to her forehead and neck. At 24 years old, Helena had been a widow for 8 months now, and every single day of those months had taught her new lessons about survival she had never wanted to learn. Thomas had been the one who split the wood, mended the fences, handled the heavier work around their small homestead just outside Jordan Valley. Now there was only her, and Winter did not care about her grief or her inexperience with an axe. She was preparing for another attempt when she heard hoofbeats approaching from the east, steady and unhurried. Helena's hand instinctively moved to the rifle she kept propped against the woodpile whenever she worked outside. Visitors were rare this far from town, and not all visitors came with good intentions. She straightened, wiping her hands on her worn cotton skirt, and watched as a rider crested the small rise that bordered her property. The man sat tall in his saddle, his broad-brimmed hat shading his face from the morning sun. He rode a sturdy chestnut gelding that looked well cared for, and as he drew closer, Helena could make out more details. He wore a plain work shirt rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms tanned dark from years of outdoor labor, and his boots showed the scuffs and wear of a working man. When he was close enough that she could see his face clearly, she noted he was, perhaps, in his late 20s, with strong features that were weathered but not unkind, and blue eyes that assessed her situation with a single sweeping glance. "Morning, madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat as he reined in his horse about 10 feet from where she stood. His voice was deep and carried a slight drawl that spoke of time spent farther south. "I am Russell Lewis. I have got the cattle ranch about 5 miles northeast of here. Been meaning to ride out and introduce myself properly, seeing as we are neighbors of a sort." Helena kept her expression neutral, though she relaxed her stance slightly. She had heard mention of the Lewis Ranch, one of the larger spreads in this part of Wyoming. "Helena Vaughn," she replied. "I appreciate the introduction, Mr. Lewis." Russell's gaze moved to the axe still embedded in the log, then back to her face. "Looks like you might be having a time with that oak. It is stubborn wood when it gets a certain size. Mind if I give it a try?" Pride warred with practicality in Helena's chest. She had been managing on her own for months now, had learned to do a dozen things she had never imagined she would need to know. But she also was not foolish enough to turn down genuine help when winter was coming and her woodpile was inadequate. "I would be grateful," she admitted after a moment's hesitation. Russell dismounted with an easy grace, looping his horse's reins over her fence post. He walked over to the log, studying it for a moment before gripping the axe handle. With one smooth motion that made it look effortless, he worked the blade free. "The trick is the angle," he said, more to himself than to her. He repositioned the log, examined the grain, then brought the axe down with controlled power. The wood split clean down the middle with a satisfying crack. "You have got good instinct starting the split," he continued, setting up another log from her pile. "But once it wedges in like that, sometimes you need a second tool to open up the crack. Do you have a maul or a wedge?" "I have a hammer," Helena offered, feeling slightly embarrassed that she did not know what a maul was. That will work in a pinch. Russell continued splitting logs with steady, rhythmic strikes. His movements were efficient, economical, the result of years of practice. Within minutes he had split more wood than Helena had managed in the past hour. "Your husband away working?" he asked, then immediately noticed the way her expression shifted. "I apologize. That was thoughtless of me." "He passed last winter," Helena said quietly. "Pneumonia took him fast." Russell stopped mid-swing, lowering the axe respectfully. "I am truly sorry for your loss, Mrs. Vaughn. That must have been unbearably hard." The genuine sympathy in his voice caught Helena off guard. Most people in Jordan Valley either avoided mentioning Thomas entirely or offered empty platitudes that rang hollow. "Thank you," she managed. "It has been difficult, but I am managing. I can see that." Russell looked around at her property, taking in the neat garden plot, the well-maintained chicken coop, the cabin with its freshly chinked walls. "You have done considerable work keeping this place up. That takes real fortitude." Helena felt warmth creep into her cheeks at the compliment. "I do what needs doing. That is more than most can say." Russell returned to splitting wood, but now a comfortable conversation began to flow between them. He asked about her chickens, whether she had trouble with foxes, shared that his own ranch hands were constantly battling coyotes trying to get at the calves. She found herself asking about cattle ranching, a subject she knew little about, and was surprised by how patiently he explained the rhythms of the work, the challenges of the grazing season, the preparations needed before winter set in hard. By the time the sun had climbed to its midday height, Russell had split her entire pile of logs and stacked them neatly against the cabin wall. Helena had protested multiple times that he had done more than enough, but he had waved off her objections with an easy smile. "I was overdue for a good morning's work," he insisted. "Spending all my time on horseback lately, feels good to swing an axe again." "At least let me offer you dinner," Helena said. "It is the least I can do." Russell hesitated, and she could see him weighing propriety against what was clearly genuine hunger. "If it would not be an imposition, I would appreciate that, Mrs. Vaughn. I admit I left the ranch before breakfast." "Helena, please," she said, surprising herself. "And it is no imposition at all." Inside the cabin, Helena was acutely aware of how small and simple her home must seem to a successful rancher. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room all in one, with a single bedroom off to the side and a small loft above where she stored supplies. But everything was clean and well ordered, and she took pride in that as she set about preparing a meal. Russell sat at her small wooden table, looking slightly too large for the delicate chair that had been Thomas's. He accepted the cup of water she offered and drank deeply. "You have a good well?" he asked, "deep and clean. One of the reasons Thomas chose this spot." Helena moved about her kitchen with practiced efficiency, slicing bread, ladling out stew she had made the day before, setting out butter and the last of her preserved jam. "The water never failed us, even in the driest part of summer. That is valuable." Water rights are becoming a thorny issue around here. Some of the bigger ranches are trying to claim exclusive access to certain streams and springs. Russell accepted the bowl she placed before him with a nod of thanks. "Gets ugly sometimes. Are you one of those ranchers?" Helena asked, sitting down across from him with her own smaller portion. "No, madam. I believe in being fair about resources. Got a good creek running through my property, and I never turn away a neighbor who needs to water stock in a drought." He took a bite of the stew and made an appreciative sound. "This is excellent. You have got a real talent for cooking." "It is just stew," Helena said, but she was pleased nonetheless. "Just stew that tastes better than anything my ranch cook has ever made, and I pay him good wages." Russell smiled, and Helena noticed how it transformed his somewhat stern features into something warmer, more approachable. He is capable enough, but he tends toward the basic. Beans, beef, biscuits. Everything tastes about the same after a while. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Russell spoke again. I do not mean to overstep, Helena, but I wanted to mention something. Winter comes hard in this valley, and it comes fast. Last year we had snow on the ground by mid-October, and it did not let up until March. A cabin this size, even with your woodpile doubled, you are going to need more supplies laid in. Flour, salt, preserved goods, lamp oil. And if you are planning to keep chickens through the cold months, you will need extra feed and a way to keep their water from freezing solid. Helena set down her spoon, trying not to feel defensive. I am aware of the challenges. I am sure you are. Russell paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I know what it is like to try to manage everything alone. I lost my wife 3 years ago. She died in childbirth along with our daughter, and I thought I could just push through, handle everything the same way I always had. But grief makes everything harder. The work takes longer. You forget things you would normally remember. And winter does not give you any grace period to get your head straight. Helena looked at him with new understanding, seeing the old pain that still lingered in his eyes. I did not know. I am sorry for your loss as well. Thank you. It gets easier with time, though I suppose it never stops hurting entirely. Russell met her gaze steadily. What I am trying to say, probably not very well, is that I would like to help, not out of pity or because I think you cannot manage, but because we are neighbors and neighbors look after each other in country like this. It is how people survive. What kind of help are you offering? Helena asked carefully. Practical help. I have got extra feed stored at the ranch. I can bring you some for your chickens, enough to see them through till spring. I have also got connections with the general store in Jordan Valley. I could help you get supplies at cost, save you some money, and if you need firewood cut. He gestured toward the door and the neat stack outside. Well, you have seen I do not mind the work. Why would you do all this? The question came out more suspicious than Helena intended, but she had learned to be wary of offers that seemed too generous. There was usually a price one way or another. Russell did not look offended. Couple of reasons. First, like I said, it is what neighbors do. Second, I've got 15 men working for me and we produce more than enough food to feed all of us. Sharing some surplus is no hardship. And third, he paused, seeming to debate how much to reveal. This valley gets lonesome, especially for those of us who have lost partners. I do not have many people I can talk to who understand what that is like. Today, sitting here, talking with someone who knows that particular kind of lonely, it has been good. Worth the ride out here all by itself. Helena felt something in her chest loosen, a tightness she had not even realized she was carrying. I know what you mean, she said quietly. People in town, they mean well, but they keep saying things like he is in a better place or time heals all wounds. They do not understand that some days it takes everything I have just to get out of bed and feed the chickens. But you do it anyway. That is what matters. Russell finished his stew and sat back. Listen, I do not want to make you uncomfortable or make you feel obligated. If you would rather, I just ride on back to my ranch and we leave it at neighborly greetings when we pass on the road, I will respect that. But I am offering genuine help with no strings attached. You can think on it if you need to. Helena studied him for a long moment, weighing her instincts. She had gotten fairly good at reading people in the months since Thomas's death. Had to be in order to protect herself from those who might see a widow as easy prey. But Russell's eyes were steady and honest, his manner straightforward without being pushy. And more than that, She found she did not want him to just ride away and leave her alone again with only her chickens and her grief for company. "I would appreciate the help," she said finally, "and I would like you to visit again if you have the time. It has been good to talk to someone." The smile that spread across Russell's face was genuine and lit up his whole expression. "I would like that too. How about I come back in a couple of days with that chicken feed, and maybe we can take stock of what else you might need before the weather turns?" "That sounds reasonable." Russell stood, collecting his hat from where he had hung it on a peg by the door. "Thank you for the meal, Helena. It was the best I have had in longer than I care to admit. Thank you for the help with the wood, and for being honest with me." Helena walked him to the door, suddenly not wanting him to leave but not sure how to say so without seeming improper. He paused in the doorway, looking back at her. "I meant what I said, about understanding the loneliness. If you ever need someone to talk to, or if you just need help with something practical, do not hesitate to ask. I am not that far away. I will remember that." Helena watched from her porch as Russell mounted his horse and rode back the way he had come, his figure gradually disappearing over the rise. The stack of split wood against her cabin wall was solid proof that the morning had not been some strange dream. She realized she was smiling, the first real smile she had felt pull at her lips in months. The day suddenly seemed a little warmer, a little brighter than it had when she had woken that morning dreading the wood chopping. The next 2 days passed slowly. Helena went through her usual routines, tending her garden, collecting eggs, mending clothes that needed repair, but she found her thoughts wandering repeatedly to Russell Lewis. She told herself she was just looking forward to the practical help he had offered, but she knew it was more than that. There had been something in the way they had talked to each other, an ease and understanding that she had not felt with anyone since Thomas's death. Maybe not even before then, if she was being truly honest with herself. She and Thomas had married young, her barely 18 and him 21, both of them children of homesteaders trying to make a go of it in Wyoming territory. It had been a practical match more than a romantic one, though they had cared for each other in their way. Thomas had been a good man, steady and reliable, but he had not been much of a talker. Their evenings had often passed in comfortable silence, but Helena sometimes wondered what it might be like to have a partner who wanted to really talk, to share thoughts and ideas and dreams. When Russell returned on the 3rd day as promised, Helena was embarrassed to realize she had taken extra care with her appearance. She had washed her hair the night before and pinned it up more carefully than usual, and she wore her better dress, the deep blue cotton one with the small flowers embroidered on the collar. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that this was purely a neighborly visit, but she could not quite convince herself. Russell arrived mid-morning driving a wagon rather than riding horseback. The wagon bed was loaded with several large sacks. "Morning," he called out as he pulled the horses to a stop near her cabin. "I brought more than just chicken feed. Hope you do not mind." Helena came down from the porch, genuinely curious. "What else did you bring?" "Well, I was loading up the feed and got to thinking about what else might be useful." Russell jumped down from the wagon seat and began pointing to different sacks. "Got you 50 pounds of flour, 20 pounds of sugar, salt, dried beans, some coffee, lamp oil, and a few other sundries. Also brought this." He pulled back a corner of canvas to reveal a large metal contraption. "It is a better stove, small but more efficient than what I am guessing you have got in there, will heat better and use less wood." Helena stared at the supplies, overwhelmed. "Russell, this is too much. I cannot accept all of this." "You can and you will," he said firmly but kindly. "Consider it an investment in having someone decent to talk to within riding distance, purely selfish on my part. I cannot pay you back for all of this. I am not asking you to. Russell started hefting one of the flour sacks. Where do you want these stored? Helena wanted to argue further, but she could see the determined set to his jaw. This was a man used to making decisions and following through on them. There is a root cellar accessible from inside, she said finally. But Russell, truly, this is extraordinarily generous. It is practical, he corrected, though his eyes were warm. Now, are you going to show me this cellar, or am I going to have to guess where it is? They spent the next hour unloading the wagon and storing everything properly. The root cellar was well built, but had been looking sparse. With the new supplies, it suddenly felt secure, like Helena might actually make it through the winter without worry. Russell was true to his word about the stove as well. He spent the afternoon installing it, removing Helena's smaller, older stove and replacing it with the new one. He worked with the quiet competence of someone who had done similar tasks 100 times before. You are going to notice the difference once the real cold sets in, Russell said, standing back to admire his work. This will heat the whole cabin evenly and hold temperature through the night with just one good loading before bed. I do not know what to say, Helena admitted. Thank you seems insufficient. Then do not say anything. Just make me another bowl of that stew if you have got any left. He grinned at her, and Helena laughed, the sound surprising her with its brightness. I can do better than leftover stew. Give me an hour and I will make us a proper supper. I will finish up out here and tend to the horses. Helena threw herself into cooking with more enthusiasm than she had felt for the task in months. She made biscuits from the fresh flour, fried up some of the salt pork Russell had included in his supplies, made gravy, and even opened one of her precious jars of preserved peaches for dessert. When she called Russell inside, she had the table set properly with her good plates and the oil lamp lit against the gathering dusk. This looks incredible, Russell said, genuine appreciation in his voice. He had cleaned up at the well, she noticed, his face and hands scrubbed, his hair dampened and combed back. You did not have to go to such trouble. You installed a stove and brought me half a winter's worth of supplies. I think I can manage supper. Helena sat down across from him, feeling oddly nervous. Besides, it is nice to cook for someone again. I have been eating pretty basic meals when it is just me. They ate and talked as the evening deepened outside. Russell told her about his ranch, about the challenges of managing cattle in open-range country, about the men who worked for him. Helena talked about her garden, about her plans to possibly get a milk cow in the spring, about the small pleasures she found in the routines of her days. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences that felt natural rather than awkward. Can I ask you something personal? Helena said as they finished their coffee. Of course. You said you lost your wife 3 years ago. Have you thought about remarrying? It seems like a rancher would benefit from having a wife to help manage the household. Russell was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. I have thought about it, he admitted, but I have not met anyone who felt right. There are plenty of eligible women in Jordan Valley and over in the larger towns, but most of them. He paused, searching for words. They see the ranch, the success, and they are interested in that, not in me, not in building something together. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Helena said. After Thomas died, I had 3 separate men from town approach me about marriage within the first 2 months. None of them asked about me, about how I was managing or what I wanted. They just saw a property and a woman they assumed needed taking care of. What did you tell them? That I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Thank you very much. Helena smiled wryly. They did not take it well. I got a reputation for being difficult. Good, Russell said firmly. You should be difficult if the alternative is settling for someone who does not see your worth. The intensity in his voice made Helena's heart beat faster. She looked down at her coffee cup, suddenly shy. "Thank you for saying that. I mean it." Russell reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand as if asking permission. Helena looked up, meeting his eyes, and slowly moved her hand the last few inches. His hand was large and warm, calloused from work but gentle as it closed around hers. "You are a remarkable woman, Helena Vaughn, strong and capable and kind. Any man would be lucky to earn your regard." "Russell." His name came out barely above a whisper. "Too much?" he asked, but he did not pull his hand away. "Tell me if I am moving too fast. The last thing I want is to make you uncomfortable." "You are not," Helena assured him, though her heart was racing now. I have not felt anything like this since. Well, if I am being honest, I am not sure I have ever felt quite like this." "Like what?" "Like I want to know everything about you. Like I want you to stay here and keep talking until dawn. Like maybe I am not alone anymore." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, and she felt herself blushing. "That probably sounds foolish." "It sounds exactly right." Russell's thumb brushed gently over her knuckles. "Because I feel the same way." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined across the table, the lamplight casting warm shadows around the small cabin. Finally, Russell sighed. "I should go. It is getting late, and I do not want to compromise your reputation any further." "I suppose you are right," Helena said reluctantly. She walked him to the door, neither of them quite ready to let go of the other's hand until the last possible moment. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Russell asked. "I know I have been taking up a lot of your time." "I would like that." "I would like that very much." Russell's smile was brilliant even in the dim light from the doorway. "Tomorrow, then. Maybe I could bring some tools and we could work on reinforcing your chicken coop for winter. I noticed a few boards that could use replacing." "That would be helpful." Helena paused, then added boldly, "And nice. It would be nice to spend more time with you." "Sleep well, Helena." "You too, Russell." She watched him ride away in the moonlight, then leaned against the doorframe, pressing a hand to her chest where her heart was still beating fast. She felt like a girl again, giddy and nervous and excited all at once. But she was not a girl. She was a woman who had been married, who had buried a husband, who had learned hard lessons about life and loss. Whatever she was feeling for Russell Lewis was not childish infatuation. It was something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Russell did come back the next day, and the day after that. Each visit had an ostensible purpose, some task or chore that needed doing, but both of them knew the real reason was simply to be together. They worked side by side on various projects around Helena's property, and with each passing day, they shared more of themselves. Russell told her about growing up in Texas, about following the cattle trails north as a young man, about saving every penny until he could buy his own land. Helena shared memories of her childhood, of her parents who had both died of fever the year after she married Thomas, of dreams she had tucked away when she became a wife at 18. "Did you want children?" Russell asked one afternoon as they took a break from mending fence line. They were sitting on a fallen log, sharing water from a canteen and watching Helena's chickens scratch in the dirt. "I did," Helena admitted. "It never happened, though. Thomas and I tried, especially the first few years. Eventually, we just accepted it was not meant to be. What about you?" "You said you lost a daughter." "Sarah," Russell said quietly. "We named her Sarah, even though she only lived a few minutes. My wife, Margaret, she lingered for nearly a week before the fever took her too. The doctor said sometimes women just are not built for childbirth, that there was nothing anyone could have done differently. But I still wonder." Helena reached over and took his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. "You cannot blame yourself for something that was beyond your control. Logically, I know that, but logic and grief do not always work together. Russell squeezed her hand gently. I would like to try again someday, though, to be a father, if I ever found the right woman to build that life with. I think you would make a wonderful father, Helena said softly. You are patient and kind, and you actually listen when people talk. That is rarer than it should be. You would make a wonderful mother, Russell replied, his blue eyes serious as they met hers. You are nurturing and strong, and you have got more courage than most men I know. The air between them seemed charged suddenly, heavy with unspoken possibilities. They were sitting close enough that Helena could see the small scar on Russell's jaw, could count the different shades of blue in his eyes. She found herself wanting to lean closer, to close the small distance between them, but fear held her back. Fear of moving too fast, of ruining this fragile new connection, of opening herself up to potential loss again. Russell seemed to sense her hesitation. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so sweet and old-fashioned that it made Helena's breath catch. I am going to court you properly, he announced. The way I should have from the start, instead of just showing up and taking over your wood chopping. Helena laughed, the tension breaking. I think bringing half your supply stores counts as pretty good courting. That was just being neighborly, Russell insisted with mock seriousness. Proper courting involves things like Sunday dinners and chaperone socials and me asking your father's permission, though I suppose we will have to skip that last part. I suppose we will. Helena felt warmth spreading through her chest. So this is you officially declaring your intentions. This is me officially declaring that I am falling in love with you, Helena Vaughn, and I would very much like the opportunity to convince you to fall in love with me too. Russell's voice was steady, certain, with none of the hesitation or doubt that had characterized Thomas's awkward proposal years ago. I know it has not been long. I know people will talk. But I have lived through losing someone I cared about, and it taught me not to waste time on things that matter. You matter. Helena felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. I think I am already falling in love with you, she whispered. That probably makes me foolish or improper or any number of things the ladies in town would disapprove of, but it is true. Then we will be foolish together. Russell cupped her face gently with his free hand, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. She did not want to. When his lips met hers, the kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. Helena's eyes fluttered closed, and for just a moment, everything else fell away. There was only this, the gentle pressure of his mouth on hers, the warmth of his hand against her cheek, the rightness of being held by someone who truly saw her. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Russell rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that for days now. I am glad you finally did. They sat together as the afternoon sun painted everything golden, hands clasped, shoulders touching, talking about everything and nothing. When Russell finally had to leave to get back to his ranch before full dark, they parted with another kiss, this one a little longer, a little deeper, leaving Helena dizzy and happy in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt both extraordinary and wonderfully domestic. Russell came to visit several times a week, always with some practical purpose, but really just to spend time with Helena. They worked together on various tasks, preparing both their properties for winter. Russell brought some of his ranch hands over one weekend, and they helped Helena reinforce her barn and make repairs to her roof that she could never have managed alone. In return, Helena sent Russell back to his ranch with loaves of fresh bread, jars of her preserved vegetables, and carefully wrapped packages of cookies that she knew the ranch hands would appreciate. The people of Jordan Valley noticed, of course. In a small town, very little went unremarked. Helena became aware of the whispers when she went to the general store, the speculative looks from other women. Some were disapproving, muttering about indecent haste and proper mourning periods. Others were merely curious or even approving, seeing a practical solution to two lonely people's problems. Helena tried not to care about the gossip, but it wore on her. She mentioned it to Russell one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples over the Wyoming landscape. "People are talking," she said quietly, "saying I am disrespecting Thomas's memory by moving on so quickly." Russell's jaw tightened. "People need to mind their own business. I cannot help feeling like maybe they are right, though. It has not even been a year. Sometimes I feel guilty that I am this happy when Thomas is barely cold in the ground." "Helena, look at me." Russell waited until she met his eyes. "Thomas would not want you to spend the rest of your life alone and miserable out of some misplaced sense of loyalty. I have to believe that, because I know I would not want that for Margaret. I loved her and I mourned her, and I will always carry her memory. But I also know that she would want me to find happiness again, to build a new life. Is that how you feel about Thomas?" Helena thought carefully before answering. "Thomas was a good man. I cared for him deeply, but our marriage was practical, comfortable. We were partners in survival more than anything else, and I think he would be relieved knowing I found someone to help me keep the homestead going. He worried about what would happen to me if something happened to him. Then honor his memory by living well, by being happy. That is what the people who love us really want." Russell put his arm around her shoulders, and Helena leaned into his warmth. "As for what people in town think, they will always find something to gossip about. Next month it will be someone else's business they are all stirred up about." "You are probably right. I am definitely right." Russell pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Now I have been thinking about something and I want to run it by you, all right? Winter is going to be here in earnest in another few weeks. Once the snow sets in deep, travel between our places is going to be difficult if not impossible for stretches of time. I do not like the idea of you being stuck out here completely alone for days or weeks at a time." Helena pulled back to look at him. "What are you suggesting?" "A few options. 1. You could close up this place for the winter and come stay at the ranch. I've got a housekeeper, Mrs. Martinez, who runs the household. She has got her own quarters, and there would be plenty of room for you without any impropriety. 2. I could hire someone to stay out here with you, another woman maybe, so you would have company and help if you need it. Or 3. He paused, his eyes searching hers. "We could get married before the snow flies. Make this official and proper so nobody can say a word against you." Helena's heart began to race. "That is quite a range of options." "I do not want to pressure you," Russell said quickly. "I know marriage is a big step and maybe it is too soon, but I also meant what I said about not wasting time. I love you, Helena. I want to build a life with you. And practically speaking, being married would solve a lot of problems." "That is very romantic," Helena said dryly, but she was smiling. Proposing based on practical considerations. Russell had the grace to look embarrassed. "That came out wrong. What I meant to say is that I want to marry you because I love you and because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. The practical benefits are just a bonus." "That is better." Helena took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I love you too, Russell, and yes, I will marry you." The joy that lit up Russell's face was worth every moment of uncertainty, every whisper of gossip, every complicated feeling she had worked through. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her soundly, holding her like she was something precious and irreplaceable. "Are you sure?" he asked when they finally broke apart. "I do not want you to feel rushed. I am sure. You are right that life is too short to waste time, and I have already been married once for practical reasons. This time I want to marry for love. I want to marry you." They set the date for mid-October, giving themselves 3 weeks to prepare. It would be a simple ceremony, nothing elaborate, but it would be theirs. Russell had to return to his ranch that night, but he left with promises to return in 2 days to help Helena start packing up the things she would want to bring to the ranch. "This will still be yours," he assured her. "Your property, your homestead. We can come back in the spring, keep it maintained. Maybe hire someone to work it or use it as a line camp for ranch hands, but it will always be here." "Thank you for understanding that it matters to me," Helena said. "Thomas and I built this place from nothing. I do not want to just abandon it." "We will never abandon it, I promise." The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Helena had to pack up her household, decide what to take and what to leave, prepare for a wedding, and deal with the inevitable increased gossip that flew around Jordan Valley once word got out. Russell was constantly in motion, handling his ranch responsibilities while also making preparations for Helena to join the household. He introduced her to Mrs. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s who had been widowed young and had been keeping house for Russell for the past 2 years. "I am so happy Mr. Lewis is finally settling down again," Mrs. Martinez said warmly, clasping Helena's hands. "He is a good man, the best, and this big house has been too empty for too long. It needs a woman's touch, needs to be a real home again." Helena liked her immediately. She also met several of the ranch hands, men with weathered faces and shy smiles who touched their hat brims respectfully and welcomed her. She could see the genuine affection and loyalty they had for Russell, which told her volumes about what kind of employer and leader he was. The ranch itself was impressive, far larger and more developed than Helena's small homestead. The main house was a sprawling structure with multiple bedrooms, a large kitchen, a proper dining room, and even a parlor with beautiful windows that looked out over the valley. Russell gave her a tour, showing her everything with an endearing nervousness, clearly wanting her to love it as much as he did. "We can change anything you want," he assured her. "Rearrange furniture, paint walls, whatever would make you feel at home here." "It is already wonderful," Helena said honestly, "but I appreciate that you want my input. Thomas never. Well, he made all the decisions about our place. I sometimes felt more like a tenant than a partner. This is your home now, same as mine. Your opinions matter, your preferences matter. I want us to build this life together, Helena. Really together." The wedding took place on a brilliant October afternoon, with the aspens turning gold on the mountainsides and the air crisp and clear. They were married by the circuit judge in Jordan Valley, with Mrs. Martinez and Russell's foreman, a steady man named Pete, serving as witnesses. Helena wore a new dress Russell had insisted on buying for her, a lovely deep green that brought out the color of her eyes. Russell wore his best suit, looking handsome and solid and real. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Russell kissed Helena with a gentleness that made her eyes sting with happy tears. They signed the papers, made it all official, and then returned to the ranch for a celebration dinner that Mrs. Martinez had prepared. Several of the ranch hands joined them, and the evening was filled with laughter, good food, and toasts to the new couple. Later, as the guests departed and Mrs. Martinez discreetly retired to her quarters, Helena and Russell were finally alone. They climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, a large space that Russell had clearly worked to make welcoming. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, there were wildflowers in a vase on the dresser, and the bed was made up with a beautiful quilt. "I am nervous," Helena admitted, standing in the middle of the room and twisting her hands together. "Is that foolish? I was married before." "I am nervous too," Russell confessed. He crossed to her, taking her hands gently. "We do not have to do anything tonight except sleep if you would rather. There is no rush. We have all the time in the world now." But Helena shook her head. "I do not want to wait. I want this to feel like a real beginning. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Russell kissed her slowly, thoroughly, his hands gentle as they began to work at the buttons of her dress. Helena's fingers fumbled with his shirt, both of them taking their time, learning each other. When they finally came together, it was with a sweetness and passion that Helena had never experienced before. With Thomas, intimacy had been brief and perfunctory, something to be gotten through. This was entirely different. Russell was attentive and patient, making sure Helena felt cherished and desired. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Helena felt completely at peace for the first time in as long as she could remember. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too." Russell's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on this." "Thank you for splitting my firewood that day," Helena said, and felt Russell's chest move with quiet laughter. "Best decision I ever made." The first winter of their marriage was everything Helena had hoped for and more. The ranch was indeed a busy place, with constant work to be done even in the coldest months, but it never felt overwhelming. Russell had good systems in place, reliable men working for him, and a genuine talent for managing both land and people. Helena found her own place in the rhythm of the ranch, working alongside Mrs. Martinez in the house, but also bringing her own skills and ideas. She started a larger garden plot than the ranch had previously maintained, planning for the spring. She took over the bookkeeping, discovering she had a knack for figures and organization that Russell admitted was better than his own. She also became the unofficial medic for the ranch, treating minor injuries and illnesses among the hands, drawing on knowledge she had learned from her mother and books. But more than the work, what made the winter special was the intimacy of building a life with Russell. They talked late into the nights, curled up together in their bed or sitting by the fire in the parlor. They shared meals and chores and quiet moments. They made love with increasing confidence and joy, learning what pleased each other. And slowly, Helena began to understand what marriage could be when it was based on love and mutual respect rather than just practical necessity. In February, Helena began to suspect she might be pregnant. She said nothing at first, not wanting to get Russell's hopes up if she was wrong. But when she missed her courses for the second month and began feeling queasy in the mornings, she could no longer deny the possibility. She finally told Russell on a snowy evening as they sat together in the parlor. "I think I am carrying a child," she said quietly, watching his face carefully for his reaction. Russell went very still. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor confirming it, but all the signs are there." For a moment, Russell's face showed a complex mixture of emotions, joy and fear and hope all tangled together. Then he pulled Helena into his arms, holding her tightly. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Helena asked, even though she could feel the answer in the way he held her. "Terrified," Russell admitted. "But yes, incredibly happy. Are you the same?" "Both." Russell pulled back just enough to look at her face. "We will get through this together. I will take care of you. I will make sure you have the best care possible." "I know you will." Helena kissed him softly. "I am not Margaret, Russell. Every pregnancy is different. Try not to let fear steal your joy." "I will try." Russell placed a hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child. I can hardly believe it." The pregnancy progressed normally, much to everyone's relief. Helena bloomed with health, her body taking to the changes with ease. Russell was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about whether she was doing too much or not eating enough. Mrs. Martinez was a steady presence, offering practical advice and reassurance based on her own experiences as a mother. As Helena's belly grew, Russell would talk to the baby in the evenings, his hands spread across her stomach, telling stories and making promises about the life they would have. Helena loved watching him during these moments, seeing the tenderness and hope on his face. "Boy or girl, what are you hoping for?" Helena asked one night. "Healthy," Russell said immediately. "That is all that matters, but if I am being honest, I would not mind a son. Someone to eventually take over the ranch, carry on the work. Though a daughter would be just as wonderful. I could teach a girl everything I would teach a boy." "That is very progressive of you," Helena teased. "I learned from the best." Russell kissed her rounded belly. "You have shown me what a woman can accomplish when she is determined. Any daughter of ours would have the same strength." In September, as the leaves began to turn again and Helena felt as large as a barn, the labor pains began. Russell immediately sent for the doctor from Jordan Valley and paced the downstairs like a caged animal while Mrs. Martinez and the doctor attended Helena upstairs. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Russell could hear Helena's cries of pain, and it took all his willpower not to burst into the room despite knowing he would only be in the way. Finally, just as dawn was breaking, a new sound filled the house, the lusty wail of a newborn baby. Russell was halfway up the stairs before Mrs. Martinez appeared at the top, her face wreathed in smiles. "You have a son, Mr. Lewis, a big, healthy boy, and your wife is tired but doing well." Russell took the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the bedroom to find Helena propped up against the pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up as he entered, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy. "Russell, meet your son." Russell approached slowly, almost reverently. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had stopped crying and was looking around with unfocused eyes, his little mouth working. He had a surprising amount of dark hair, and Russell thought Helena's nose. "He is perfect," Russell breathed. "You are perfect. I cannot believe you did this." "We did this," Helena corrected softly. She shifted the baby so Russell could hold him. Russell's hands trembled slightly as he accepted the precious bundle, cradling his son for the first time. "Hello there, little one," he murmured. "I am your papa, and I promise I am going to do everything I can to give you a good life, to be the kind of father you deserve." The baby yawned enormously, making both parents laugh through their tears. They named him Thomas Russell Lewis, honoring Helena's first husband but giving him Russell's name as well, a bridge between past and present. Young Tommy, as they quickly began calling him, was a good baby, healthy and strong with excellent lungs that he exercised regularly. The ranch hands were all immediately smitten with the newest addition. They took turns whittling toys and checking in to see if Helena needed anything. Pete, the foreman, admitted that it was good to have a child on the ranch again, that it made the place feel more hopeful somehow. Helena adapted to motherhood with the same quiet competence she brought to everything else. She nursed Tommy, cared for him, but also did not let herself be entirely consumed by motherhood. With Mrs. Martinez's help and Russell's full support, she maintained her own interests and work. Russell was a hands-on father in a way that was unusual for the time. He changed diapers, walked the floor with Tommy when he was fussy, and insisted on being involved in every aspect of his son's care. "People in town think I am odd," Russell told Helena one evening as he gently rocked a sleeping Tommy. "Pete mentioned that some of the other ranchers are saying I am too soft, too involved with the baby. that it is women's work. What do you think? Helena asked. I think those men are missing out on the best part of life. I think they are fools if they have children and choose not to know them, not to be part of raising them. Russell looked down at his son's peaceful face. I wasted 3 years being afraid to love again after Margaret died. I am not wasting another moment of the time I have been given. Helena crossed to him and kissed his cheek. You are going to be an amazing father. You already are. The years that followed were full and rich and happy in ways Helena had never imagined possible. Tommy grew into a bright, curious toddler, then an energetic boy who followed Russell around the ranch like a shadow. 2 years after Tommy was born, Helena had a daughter they named Grace, and then 2 years after that, another son they called William. The house that had been too empty was now filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Russell's ranch continued to prosper. With Helena managing the books and helping to plan, they made smart decisions about expansion and investment. They weathered droughts and hard winters, market downturns and occasional conflicts with other ranchers, but they weathered them together. Helena never lost her independence or her own small homestead. They kept the property maintained, and several times a year the whole family would ride out to spend a few days there, keeping it alive as a reminder of where they had started. The gossips of Jordan Valley had long since moved on to other scandals. Russell and Helena became respected pillars of the small community. They were known for their fairness in business dealings, their willingness to help neighbors in need, and the obvious love they had for each other and their children. The Lewis family was everything a Western family was supposed to be: hardworking, resilient, and devoted to each other. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Russell surprised Helena by taking her back to her old homestead for a few days alone, leaving the children with Mrs. Martinez. They spent the time working on the property together, making repairs and improvements, but also simply being together without the constant demands of children and ranch work. One evening, they sat on the porch where they had shared so many conversations during their courtship. The sun was setting in its usual spectacular display, and Helena leaned against Russell's shoulder with a contented sigh. You ever regret it? Russell asked. Giving up your independence, joining your life to mine? Helena turned to look at him in surprise. Never, not for a single moment. Do you? God, no. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and the children. I just worry sometimes that you sacrifice too much. You were managing on your own, building a life. Then I came along and changed everything. You improved everything, Helena corrected firmly. Russell, I was surviving before you, but I was not living. You gave me a partner, a true partner, for the first time in my life. You gave me children and a home and a love I did not know was possible, and you never once asked me to be anything less than myself. How could I possibly regret that? Russell pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. I was so nervous that first day I rode up and saw you with that axe stuck in the log. I almost kept riding. Thought it was none of my business, that you would just be annoyed by some stranger interfering. I am very glad you stopped. Helena tilted her face up for a proper kiss, which Russell was happy to provide. That stuck axe might have been the luckiest accident of my life. Mine too. They sat together as the stars began to appear, talking about their children's futures, about the ranch's plans for the coming years, about the life they were building together. It was a conversation they had had 100 times before and would have 100 times again, the kind of comfortable planning that came from knowing you had found your forever person. You remember what you said to me the day you proposed? Helena asked. You said you were falling in love with me and wanted the chance to convince me to fall in love with you too. I remember. I was terrified you would say no. I do not think I ever told you this properly, but you did not have to convince me of anything. I was already in love with you. From probably the second week of knowing you, maybe even earlier. Helena laced her fingers through his. I just needed time to let myself believe it was real. It is real, Russell assured her. The most real thing in my life. You and me and our family, this love we have built together. That is what matters. That is what lasts. Always, Helena agreed. And it did last. Through all the years that followed, through the challenges and joys, the triumphs and occasional sorrows, their love remained the foundation of everything. They watched their children grow into capable, kind adults. Tommy eventually took over running the ranch. William became a veterinarian serving the ranching community, and Grace married a schoolteacher and started a school in Jordan Valley. Russell and Helena became grandparents, then great-grandparents, their family tree spreading wide and strong. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole extended family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. There were dozens of people, 3 generations of Lewis family plus friends from all over Wyoming. Russell, now in his late 70s with silver hair but still strong, stood with Helena and looked out at the crowd. "We built something good, did we not?" he said quietly. "We did," Helena agreed. She was 74 now, her dark hair gone gray but her eyes still bright and sharp. "Better than good. We built something wonderful." Their oldest grandson made a toast, talking about what an inspiration his grandparents' marriage had been, how their love and partnership had set an example for the whole family. Russell and Helena held hands through the whole speech, the same way they had held hands through 50 years of life together. That night, after everyone had left or retired to various bedrooms throughout the house, Russell and Helena lay together in the bed they had shared for 5 decades. Helena's head was on Russell's shoulder, his arm around her, the same position they had slept in countless times. "You remember when I was splitting wood alone?" Helena asked softly. "Of course. Best day of my life, seeing you there with that stubborn piece of oak." "You split it for me," Helena continued. "And then you shared everything else. Your food, your supplies, your home, your name, your life, your love. You gave me everything I did not even know I needed." "You gave me everything too," Russell said. "A reason to stop just existing and start really living again. A partner who made me better. A family. A future. Helena, you were my second chance at happiness, and I have tried every day to be worthy of that gift. You have been more than worthy. You have been everything." Helena pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "I love you, Russell Lewis. Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for splitting my wood and staying to split everything else. I love you too, Helena Lewis. Always have, always will." They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together. Outside, the Wyoming wind whispered through the valley, carrying with it the promise of another tomorrow, another day to share, another chapter in a love story that had begun with a stuck axe and a helpful rancher on an autumn morning so many years before. It was a love story that had weathered every storm, that had grown deeper and richer with each passing year, that had created ripples spreading out through generations. It was, in the end, exactly what love was supposed to be. A partnership of equals, a friendship that never faded, a passion that matured but never died, and a commitment that lasted until the very end and beyond. Russell lived to be 82, passing peacefully in his sleep on a spring morning with Helena beside him. She followed him 3 years later, and they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but bearing inscriptions that told their story. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he split wood and shared everything. And beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She was never alone again. Their descendants continued to run the ranch for generations, keeping the land in the family and maintaining the values Russell and Helena had instilled: hard work, fairness, compassion, and above all, love. The old homestead, where Helena had been splitting wood that fateful day, was preserved as well, maintained by the family as a reminder of where it all began. Young couples in the family would sometimes visit it, standing in the yard where Russell had first split wood for Helena, imagining that first meeting and the love story that had grown from such simple beginnings. It became a tradition to kiss there, to start new chapters of the family story in the place where the original love had taken root. Russell and Helena had found that love, had nurtured it and protected it, and let it grow into something that outlasted them both. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of taking a chance on love, even when your heart has been broken, even when the timing seems wrong, even when practical considerations say you should be cautious. Because sometimes the heart knows better than the head. Sometimes love arrives on an ordinary morning when you are just trying to split wood for the winter. Sometimes the right person rides into your life at exactly the right moment, even if you did not know you were waiting for them. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that person stays and splits wood with you and shares everything else and builds a life so rich and full that it becomes a legacy worth remembering. That was Russell and Helena's gift to all who came after them. Proof that love could heal, that second chances were real, that partnership meant truly sharing everything, the work and the joy, the sorrows and the triumphs. They had lived their love story out loud, without apology, and it had blessed everyone it touched. Their great-great-grandchildren would grow up hearing stories about the widow and the rancher, about stuck axes and split wood, about choosing love over fear and building something beautiful from the simple decision to help a neighbor in need. And those children would carry those lessons forward into their own lives, keeping alive the spirit of generosity and partnership that Russell and Helena had embodied so completely. The ranch itself stood as a monument to what they had built together, not just the physical property but the community they had fostered, the way of life they had exemplified. The Lewis Ranch was known throughout Wyoming as a place where people were treated fairly, where a handshake meant something, where family came first but neighbors were never forgotten. Those values had been established by Russell and Helena in those early years when they were building their life together, and they had never wavered from them. In the end, theirs was a simple story, really. A man had helped a woman. They had fallen in love. They had built a life together. But in that simplicity was profound beauty, the kind of beauty that comes from two people truly seeing each other, truly honoring each other, truly choosing each other every day for the rest of their lives. It was not always easy. There were hard times and disagreements and challenges that tested them, but they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. The legacy they left was not just in land or money or even in the family they created, though all of those things mattered. The real legacy was in showing what love could be when it was done right, when two people committed not just to romance but to partnership, not just to passion but to friendship, not just to the good times but to weathering the storms together. They proved that you could find love after loss, that you could build something new without forgetting what came before, that taking a risk on love was always worth it when you found the right person. And so the story of the widow who was splitting wood alone and the rancher who split it for her and shared everything else became more than just their story. It became a blueprint for how to love well, how to partner truly, how to build a life of meaning and purpose. It became hope for those who thought their chance at love had passed. inspiration for those just starting out, and a reminder to everyone that the simplest acts of kindness can change the entire trajectory of a life. All because Russell Lewis decided to stop and help Helena Vaughn with a stubborn piece of wood one autumn morning in Wyoming, and neither of them could have imagined where that simple decision would lead them. To a love that would last a lifetime and beyond, to a family that would span generations, to a story worth telling and retelling, keeping their love alive long after they themselves had passed into memory.